Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Legal Tech Week, the show where we talk about the top stories in legal tech and innovation. It is May 17th, 2024. I am Bob Ambrogi. I write the blog Law Sites and have a podcast called Law Next. And we've got a full house of panelists today. Go around and introduce each of them, starting with Caroline Hill.
Yes, hi Bob, hi everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Caroline Hill. I'm the editor-in-chief of Legal IT Insider based in the UK. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. And next up, Patrice.
Patrice from Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer. Always good to be here. I'm coming to you from a reasonably nice day outside, which is, probably not the first of the year, but one of the first. So exciting times.
Yeah, you're lucky. We got sunny, but it's not shirt sleeves out there. And sort of a surprise guest, Steve Embry, because he wasn't going to be able to make it, but fortunately he did make it. So, Steve.
Yes, I am here. I'm Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads, and I'm coming to you from scenic Omaha, Nebraska, where we're having our ABA Law Practice Division spring meeting. And I thought I was going to be tied up in meetings, but they ended sooner than I thought, so here I am.
That never happens. That's good.
I know. Well, I was running the meeting, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. All right. That helps. Good. And Stephanie Wilkins.
Hello, I am Stephanie Wilkins, editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News at ALM. I somehow forgot all of those words until they were coming out of my mouth. That kind of week. I'll blame the one you're about to introduce next, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, and last but not least, but we've invited a sometimes panelist on the show, not enough probably, but Cassandra Coyer. We invited her to come back today because today, well, why don't you tell the news, Cassandra?
I will tell the news. Yes, so I am a legal tech and news reporter at ALM, but it is my last day and I am leaving for a new role starting next Monday. I will be at Bloomberg Law for the foreseeable future. So kind of a emotional, weird day to be back, but happy to be back. Glad that I'll end. Actually, I think you had me when I had just started. So this is a nice little circle of life moment. I like it.
Yeah, early, and then after at least one of the other shows that you're at too. You've been on a couple times, but
yeah.
And doing what at Bloomberg Law because you are awesome at it?
Doing well, probably a lot of work, hopefully. But I'll be covering data privacy and security, which I've been very lucky to cover a lot of it here at ALM. So now will be my focus. So I'm really excited. And sad.
So not leaving the legal tech world exactly, and maybe we can continue to have you back on in your new role.
You have not gotten rid of me yet completely. I will be lurking around for a while longer. So
awesome.
Sorry.
That's good. But now we can ask, like, how bad of a boss is Stephanie really? I mean, what was it you've been holding back?
You have free reign. I don't even have to write your review anymore. So free reign, go for it.
So bad. I'm glad that we're here to talk about it today, actually, about what we've been through. No, it's because of Stephanie and the other incredible people at ALM that it is harder to leave than I would have wished. But I can't, I told Bob, I said, I will only if you don't make me cry. And he said, no, I want you to cry. That's I
Did I say that? I don't...
We need views.
Make me cry, but yeah.
Wait, Joe and I made this joke. I didn't even know that. Joe, great minds think alike. What can I say? Yeah, well, that's it's great. I mean, you've really, I mean, I've been really impressed with the reporting you've done. I mean, especially since you were new to the legal tech world when you stepped into this job, and I think obviously, Stephanie and everybody on the team deserves a lot of credit. But you guys have just done a really great job of covering the legal tech world at a time when there's a whole lot of shit happening in this world, and it's been really interesting. So.
Yeah, I was lucky to join at a time where things were changing enough that I sort of was able to, take a seat and get on the carousel with everyone else. So I was lucky to join at a moment of change and to be able to just, roll with it. But looking back 2 years ago, I was so intimidated by like covering legal and tech, which are such like, intimidating industries that don't always have the best reputation. I hope I'm not offending anyone. But it's proved to be completely wrong. I mean, I think at least the nexus of legal and tech is smaller of an industry than you would expect. One, so you end up really rapidly, seeing the same people and forming really relationships with sources and colleagues and alike, and then it just gets easier and easier from there. So I'm glad that I'm not leaving completely, because it would feel a little bit weird.
And I would say fully, and this is completely unbiased, that leaving where you are now going forward, like nobody would ever know that 2 years ago you knew nothing about legal or tech.
Well, I did. My family did too. They were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I promise, it makes a lot of sense. E-discovery, listen to me."
No,
So
but
now
no one would know. You talk like a pro now about it. I mean, you know more about data privacy than I do now. So,
well, that's the European in me. You can't get the French out of me. I just love my privacy. Anyway, enough about me, please.
All right. There's that sort of two sides to that coin, actually. I mean, there's something to be said for beginning to cover a beat that you kind of don't know a lot about, because you feel maybe freer to ask the questions that you might not otherwise want to ask, or somebody who has covered a beat for a while might think that's a stupid question, I'm not going to ask it, when in fact it's a really smart question, but you just don't want to like look like you're stupid or something. Whereas somebody who's coming into a field covering it for the first time maybe feels freer to just kind of ask those questions and get to learn it, and get a perspective on things that they wouldn't otherwise have.
I agree. I've been told once, I forgot who it was, someone in the industry who's a former lawyer, so that really narrows it down for you. But they were a former lawyer, and they told me that when they get on calls and they want to ask questions, they try to not to say that they're a former lawyer, because otherwise, the conversation will sort of shift and they start at a level. And instead, if you just go at it through the angle of, I don't know anything, explain this and this and this, so you get to the place where you want to be. Sometimes maybe a little more easily than if you out yourself out as an expert, whatever that means. So I could see this. I've definitely relied on the I don't know anything, explain it to me card many times because it was true. So I can see how, I think it works. I think it's good to get people talking in general to you. So don't out yourself, former lawyers. Don't do it.
But now you can explain everything to us about agentic AI and all sorts of other concepts that none of us knew anything about a while
Apparently
ago.
so.
That was actually, Stephanie, that was sort of your pick, but Cassandra wrote about it. I mean, I wonder if we should start with that story this week, since you're both here, and it was an interesting story. One of the first kind of applications of this, I guess, in the legal world.
Yeah, I mean, I picked it, and I would have picked it either way. I mean, because agents is a thing I've been getting hyped up about. If I ever get around to writing about codex, I was going to write about agents and how everyone was really psyched about agents. Wilson Sonsini came out with the first, I wasn't expecting to see one this soon, about an application actually of agentic AI in legal. I mean, Cassandra talked to David Wang and the product, so she can get into it more about exactly what they're doing.
Sure. It basically, agentic AI is, I guess, a synonymous way of describing autonomous AI from what I understood, meaning it's just a new technique under that same AI umbrella where those models can operate a little more autonomously, as the name suggests, and with less sort of surveillance. I don't think that's the right word, but it's sort of for tasks where you give it a little bit more control, and it can take decisions by itself, and it can, shift and recognize tone from, if it's a chatbot and there's a conversation. So it has a little bit more logical abilities than other traditional AI. And I guess in the case of Wilson Sonsini, they decided to use it for redlining capabilities. So I don't know how that's going to play out sort of in the use cases and what that autonomous piece is going to add to redlining, if it's going to be faster. But they seem to believe that it was providing sort of more accurate results, and that it was easier for it to explain how it would reach such results because it has the ability to sort of have logic. So it's interesting. I don't know if we'll see more follow. I'm not sure. I would be curious to dig into how much it costs, and the prices. I know David obviously couldn't share how much the new module is going to cost, but the way he framed it was sort of like it's much more expensive than other sort of off-the-shelf AI solutions that we've seen up until now. But he would argue that it's still much cheaper than having a human perform the red line, which is a common argument. So yeah, interesting. It was interesting. That was my first encounter with agentic AI, at least in legal. So we'll see if that's something that we see even legal tech providers start to do.
So I don't remember, it was about last year, like last April, there was the research paper that came out about generative agents that everyone got all excited about. It was that one, it had like all the graphics in it, almost looked like Sims, or it was a researcher out of Stanford that had the people where he just sort of put their agents in there, they gave them little personalities and they interacted amongst themselves, and like they just decided, like just of their own accord, like one decided they were going to throw a Valentine's Day party, and then one decided they were going to write invitations. They started inviting to each other and setting up dates and doing things, and one was going to run for office and like people to sign petitions and stuff. And like those were the agents, and left to their own accord, they just started simulating human behavior. And so it was just like sort of the first demonstration of it. And so it became, people started to say, how could these be used for legal? Can they? And it was sort of, will they ever be there? And by this time, this year, when Codex rolled around, everyone was sort of like, oh, this is the year, give it 6 months. We're going to finally be seeing agents. There was a lot of buzz about it. And that same researcher did the closing keynote of what he's researching now. And like everybody who's building like the most cutting edge stuff, like packed the room for the final keynote. It was like bouncing and waiting. And like his future research, it was like the stuff you had only seen in screenshots. You saw them like moving around the screen, and it was cool. But so everyone was just like agents. In like 5 months, we're going to see agents. And then so when this story broke, even though, and I feel like David, when he was talking to Cassandra, was very much like, this is one tiny thing. We're applying it to one very tiny little use case. But the fact that they're actually even like putting an agent application out there in the world, I thought was really interesting.
Well, I have been meaning, I've had communication. I haven't connected with David about this story yet. But I'm curious, like, so why did they say that this is a better way of doing redlining, or why are they using it for this particular use case?
He, the way he explained it to me was sort of like exactly what Stephanie was saying. We want to use it for one tiny piece that can only do redline, but we want to have more dimensions, I think is the word that he used. So he argued that contracts were very like there's many dimensions to words, and that other techniques could be limited in how they understood language in a contract, and the suggestions that they would make using apparently this agentic AI would, because they have more ability to reason, would provide more accurate results and accurate suggestions. And I would encourage you to, on his LinkedIn, he posted a screenshot of sort of what it looks like in a red line. I don't know if you saw, but it's crazy, all over the place, thousands of little corrections. And he was sort of saying people freaked out when they saw screenshots because they were like, this just looks confusing. Why would I use that? But he was saying, no, I'm just trying to show you that it's, based on the playbooks again that it was trained on, it's trying to provide more dimensional suggestions as opposed to what he argues up until now has been a little more one-dimensional and limited in what it can suggest. So I'm curious to see people that have used it, how they found the results, how different they are than other redlining capabilities. But it's interesting. I'll try to find the link to put it in the chat for people to see.
And the overall research on the agents, and not necessarily in the legal context, but the original agents, it was like, and this is what the researcher was saying in his further research and in the keynote, is that the first study was about believability, and that they were doing believable human behavior. They were doing invitations, they were having a party, they were doing whatever. And the research is going for actually accuracy. So instead of the first study being like, let's throw 20 agents in there, can they do believable things like a party? Now they're doing 1,000 agents, and will they do accurate human behavior? And they want to actually roll it out more towards like social scientists and policy researchers to try to study like legislation and public policy sort of things to predict accurate large population human behavior, which I think is interesting. And whether or not that applies to legal tech tools is another story. I think it's just a very interesting field of study for AI. So I think that's why everyone was so interested in it academically. And I don't think anyone was really prepared for it to necessarily be an application in a legal tech tool yet, which is why it really struck me when we got the press release that it was there. So we shall see.
Yeah.
I continue to maintain that, and I wrote an article about this a while ago, like the drive, I think that the drive toward human behavior is going to be in a dead end road. I think the value to the value proposition to this is going to be using it as a tool to do things that humans can't do. I don't need it to pretend to go to a party. I need these things to understand how to crunch all the shit that I can't do. And I don't know. I feel like we're spending a lot of time and energy on things that I'm not sure I buy as a long-term strategy, but we'll see.
That's what I wonder.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
Caroline.
Steve,
I'm sorry.
no,
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was
No,
just
you.
saying, this is what I was wondering. Like, I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I'm just, for Joe's point. I mean, I have seen actually that thing on LinkedIn, thinking about it, Cassandra. So, but yeah, you sort of wonder, like, to what, whether it's because they think it's going to do it better or because it's going to create us having a conversation about it. There is also that, like, is it a case of they're trying to create waves, or what's the sort of real purpose of it? That would be my curiosity. I don't know enough, so I'm not pretending to be the expert in this, but I'm just sort of curious, and I'm going to write a piece, so I'm a bit sort of late to the party, to be perfectly frank with you. So this is all quite useful.
I think it's a good question, and I think a piece of the answer is definitely a marketing piece, and I think that's been true for everyone, and not just Wilson Sonsini, but law firms and legal tech players around, alike since the beginning of Gen AI, is releasing something that's new, that's innovative, and market yourself sort of as ahead of the curve. So I don't think they would, stone me for saying that. I'm sure there's a marketing piece to this as well. I'm curious to see whether this new technique is actually going to be proved to be, fruitful and legal and helpful in contract setting. Does it make as much of a difference as they claim, to explain your results? And is it more accurate? If so, then I could see it spreading, especially in an industry like legal. If not, then yeah, especially if it comes with an even pricier cost than its predecessors, I don't know how popular it's going to be. But I'm curious. You got to ask the questions, and I can read your article and find out.
Steve, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, nothing. I thought better of it.
Oh, now we want to hear.
Really, now we want to know. I mean, I was thinking of some of the like agents that I read about are ones that are basically, it's not that they're necessarily doing, well, they're doing a human task in a sense, but they're able to do sort of slightly more complex but routine tasks. Like, you want, an example would be you want to book a trip. Well, I mean, you can go to some websites that will let you use chat to book a trip on their site or something. But an agent could possibly say, I'm going to book the flight over here and the hotel over here and get this all together and pull it all together and then deliver it to you without you having to kind of supervise the whole process. So it's in a way, it's sort of like just using AI to do sort of a more sophisticated set of functions that are generally routine in any way, but not limited to a particular application or something. Does that make sense? Or?
Yeah, that's how it was first presented to me, is that perfect example of the trip. It's up until now, you can use one of these popular chatbots and it will give you an itinerary trip and the cost, and here's where you should eat, here's where you should sleep, here's the link, and then all you have to do is book it yourself. And then Agentic AI now takes it a step further and just books it for you. So that's that extra step of being able to reason, take initiative apparently, and make decisions on its own. So of course, Sonsini was very clear that it's not making decisions by itself with the contracts. There's lawyers involved that supervise it, and that sort of work alongside it. But yeah, it does do more on its own for sure.
Yeah.
I think there
Well,
definitely was a factor of being able to say, yeah, I mean, somebody was going to be the first to say we did something with agents in law. So,
right. So believe it or not, we actually have a few other AI stories this week that we may want to talk about. And Caroline, I was curious about, you actually had a couple, but one was this industry body in the UK launching this due diligence questionnaire. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's a group called Litic, which is the Legal Innovators. I had to open it because I always get it wrong. Legal IT Innovators Group. So they represent they're the CIOs or IT directors of some of the top UK headquartered law firms. I got it up in front of me to remember. So they represent 90,000 users and 20 billion in turnover. So they're not insignificant. You know, they're sort of a very influential body, representing. They look at education, they look at innovation and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so they've I got to share for the first time they've launched a due diligence questionnaire, which it's really quite in depth. So it's broken down into 6 different parts, looking at all different levels. So actually, I'll just tell you actually. So
I dropped the edge out.
oh, well done, thank you. Yeah, so there's like it's really in depth. So you're looking at all elements of. So if you're a supplier and you use AI in your technology, which now kind of who doesn't, they want to know as that, so that they, being the law firm, will use this due diligence questionnaire to give to the supplier to find out in great depth how they're using AI, and particularly with reference to the EU the EU AI Act. And they, you know, I mean, whether it takes off, it's brand new, but it's got backing from these, you know, these quite senior people. They are influential. So it'd be really interesting to see whether it takes off. They were going to kind of keep it to themselves, but they've decided just to freely launch it, so it's available to everybody. And the idea what they want to do is to create some standardization. So they're really nervous. Like they're really nervous about some of the things that they're seeing in terms of the way that AI is being used. So that's one factor. They want to try and create sort of standards, and they don't necessarily feel that that's being achieved in other ways. They're really nervous about, you know, law firms being on the hook for using this technology and perhaps not always understanding how AI is being used, whether it contravenes the EU AI Act. Was obviously it's got teeth, whether you know, for lots of firms, because most firms are sort of, a lot of these big firms are global. So yeah, no, so it's brand new. I just wrote about it yesterday, so it'd be really interesting to see. I don't know what you guys think about it, like whether that might be something that takes off, whether it might be something that's widely adopted, which is what they hope it will be.
Yeah, I think as I read through the questionnaire, that was my first question, was adoption and use. I mean, I can certainly understand a lot of law firms wanting the answers to these questions.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that they should put them out there. It's pretty daunting for some of these vendors probably to complete everything that's on this form. I was remembering there've been a couple of attempts, way back when there was in the legal world, there was the Legal Cloud something consortium, I forget what it was called, that also kind of tried to get this idea that all the cloud vendors in legal would subscribe to this sort of set of standards and provide all this transparency around certain aspects of their products that quickly fizzled out as nobody bothered to do what they had all agreed to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, in this case, I think probably you're going to see a lot of law firms just kind of demanding this, or at least corporate legal maybe even demanding this. But some of these companies are probably going to get stumped at the first question: how does the AI enhance your product? Some of them can't even answer that. So,
I mean, I think it's kind of, it's valid. It's interesting. Dennis Kennedy was saying he's had the same look as Joe did. I don't know what look did you have, Joe? Do you want to recreate it? Was it like?
I have no idea, but I did get a ping from somebody telling me that they were leaving for the day, and so I reacted to it somehow. I don't know if how it was, but
So you know, like you swallowed a bee.
Was it your wife leaving the baby on your desk as she was saying it?
no, no. It was somebody else being like, "I can't edit anymore. I'm out," and I'm like, "Okay."
So whether this will depend.
That's
I mean,
Cassandra's line.
This is like you know, we've seen other stuff, like it's ambitious. It really depends on adoption, as you said, Bob. But you know, if more people get this sort of idea, these things are really difficult to take off. It could be that these law firms just use them, and these are big firms, so actually if you want to, if it could be the case that if you want to work with them, that you have to fill in this thing, right? I mean, they have got the right to insist on it for their own stuff. And actually, when you think of the amount of, you know, that anecdotally, the experiences they're having with vendors, they're concerned enough to have produced this, which is interesting in itself. Yeah, so but I think, you know, I mean, if corporate teams, it could be that in-house teams sort of picked this sort of thing up, and I mean, I think it's going to create it for suppliers. It would be just like a really big headache, but I think what they're trying to do is say that what they're actually saying is for suppliers, potentially it could also be a good thing because they could fill it in almost like once and actually have some kind of standardization around the types of questions they're getting as well. So they're not, there's an element of sort of a rain and court you feel about this, but you know, they're not having to go through the same process time and time again. They have the same list of questions. If you could have the standardization around these sorts of questions, that actually they could end up having less work rather than more. Which you know, which you can see there's an argument to that.
Yeah, it's a good effort. I mean, I applaud the intent of it, and I hope it gets some pickup.
Greg Lambert says he's going to use AI to answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions are funny. What if we are unhappy with the outputs of your AI and or the effects on our organization? That's a really weird question, but.
Yeah. But yeah,
All right.
we'll see. I'll report back when I know how things are going.
Yeah, report back. Report back next week if you could. Let us know.
It's your assignment.
Or be careful, and Steve's going to assign you to talk about it at ABA Tech Show.
I think the dog ate it.
Well, now that you mention it.
So a couple of stories in the news this week involving the Supreme Court and sort of AI, I guess. Joe, maybe we could start with yours, which was not that you wrote it, but that a publication with which you are affiliated published it.
Yes, this was in Above the Law, and I found it so interesting that even though I didn't write it, I thought it was worth sharing. So Dr. Adam Feldman writes a thing for us. He, you may have, if you're Supreme Court inclined, you may be a fan of his, like empirical SCOTUS, like breaking down and trying to provide some data science around the Supreme Court. He has a new thing he's been working on and is building out that takes the audio. Now, the Supreme Court still does not allow us to see images of them because, you know, it's hard to see anything that the Supreme Court does. It takes 3 years for you to see that Alito hangs his flag upside down, for instance. But it takes a while to see these things, but you can hear them because they provide audio, and you obviously have the transcripts. He's worked on a thing that can go into that and using some of the academic research that's been compiled over the years of how to predict how a Supreme Court works. You know, who talks the most, what kind of words choices they use. There's been a cottage industry of people trying to do that sort of empirical work. He's bringing it all under a roof with some AI help and putting you in a situation where you could plug a transcript and an audio recording in and potentially work out how people are going to vote. As a Supreme Court thing, that doesn't have a ton off the top of my head. It doesn't seem to have a ton of value outside of, you know, journalists trying to make some predictions, maybe some offshore gambling sites we could use. But I think it might have some value to the financial sector who could go, oh shit, this decision is going to come this way, and I should hedge, very heavily on whatever it is that benefits from women being locked down. The point is, what you can, however, expand this to potentially is if you could get something robust that could be pretty predictive of how hearings go, you might be able to take audio recordings of it, be in a position to hear very early in a case, very early motions and hearings, sentiment of where a judge is, what they're kind of thinking. Maybe you could compile that with some other predictive stuff that we already have from some of the providers and figure out, hey, this case isn't worth it for me to even spend the next 2 months where we'd all sit around waiting for something significant to happen. I'm going to lose just based on how this kind of happened, this opening hearing happened. So I'm going to get out. It's an interesting idea. And obviously, the Supreme Court gives us a decent amount of information to test it on. And so that's where it's starting. But it's some cool stuff, I thought. I don't know if I totally buy it yet, but it is the sort of thing that I think fits where I see AI as a really valuable tool, as taking lots of human-like things as far as communication points and spitting them out in a machine style way that no human ever could.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting piece. I didn't understand half of it.
Yeah. I mean, it was a very academic-y, but
the ultimate conclusion of it was really fascinating. And I guess the proof will be in the pudding, right?
Yeah, I'm going to talk with them next week and put out a story of my own about, and may well, I don't know, maybe start some side, setting betting lines. Not that I condone gambling on Supreme Court things, but maybe I could be your helper if you bet in those like offshore Irish betting online sites that they have for Supreme Court decisions. Not that anyone's ever done that, but you could use me as some help for that. I don't know.
Is there still a SCOTUS fantasy thing? There was it.
I think the SCOTUS fantasy thing is gone, and it was great because I got a like $100 gift card from that thing because the key, for those who don't remember the SCOTUS fantasy thing, the key to the SCOTUS fantasy thing, which had some legal tech ties, from some of the folks behind it, but you had to go through and you had to predict everything and how people voted on everything. And it's one of those situations. It's like watching Mel Kiper do the draft versus other people. They're all like, they all know the first round picks. And then when you get to some like random 7th rounder and Mel Kiper's like, oh yeah, he's 6'5", he does X, Y, Z, he knows everything. That's the Supreme Court docket when you're fantasy picking. Everybody's like, I know how they're going to vote in Dobbs. And then you get down to this weird ERISA case, and that takes some real deep knowledge. So I was able to clean up on that.
I was kind of thinking when you were talking about the tool, so like a lot of things in this area, what happens when one side has it because they can afford to buy it and the other side doesn't? I mean, it's
and I think that's definitely going to happen with all of these tools.
Or you get to a point in the case where one side has it and they're trying to convince the other side to settle. So they say, let me show you this kind of, I don't know. I don't know where it all takes you, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Scanning through the articles. So like, in addition to like, not just how often or when they speak up, they're trying to use the AI to scan like the sentiment of their questioning, but also like how complex of questions they ask and like basically how involved they are in questioning, and then from all of that predict.
So his work,
winning the case ultimately.
So his work has been independent of this AI kind of tool. His work has been very in the field of working this sort of stuff out. And there's been several people, like I know Ted Ruger, who used to be the dean at Penn, has written a lot about, it's really, you could tell a lot from how many times they speak, or I think he was that one. And then other scholars are like, actually, no, you can tell based on this, whatever. And he's trying to gather, Feldman and his team are trying to gather everything kind of together under one roof. build their own weighting system based on their own proprietary feeling of how it all plays out and deliver to people if you think that these scholars have been right about what you can predict based on how a case is postured, then here you go. And you feed it audio, feed it some audio, feed it a transcript, and see if it gives you an answer. Interesting. But again, I keep coming back to it's cool, but at the point that you've had a Supreme Court oral argument, like there's nothing really to be done, right? Like the decision's
There's no
over.
strategic advantage to.
They could even leak the decision in order to prevent a justice could leak the decision in order to prevent any justice from defecting, for instance, and pretend it wasn't them, and nothing would happen. Hypothetically, not that happened.
How does it necessarily apply to your particular case? If you're one and done on an oral argument in your SCOTUS case, it's not like you have a series of motions in like another level of courts.
Well, right. So with SCOTUS, you have the value of it constantly being the same panel over and over again, and often the same lawyers. And so you're in a position where you can plug it in and be like, Sotomayor said this time, the other times she said this, it means this, and yada, yada. So it obviously requires a lot of data to get that right, which is why Supreme Court is probably the easiest place for it to get off the ground, but also the least useful place for it to be off the ground, right? Like, because everything's done by then. Nobody's going to settle after the oral argument. You've already gotten it to that point. So, but
also, like, arguably, your issues should be more novel. That you're
right, yeah. Well, so the issue is if you can work out and deliver that there are some universal truths to be had scientifically about times people ask questions, ways in which sentiment analysis, whatever. If you can work out that those things have some general truism across vectors, then you could theoretically build out this model to be something that, at the circuit level at least, that's again another group of known folks.
I see more.
Yeah. You got a lot of data. You can work that out, and if you could get to a point where it delivers enough that you have some degree of confidence at even the lowest of levels, right, then you actually have something that could be very valuable.
But again, I think the interesting thing is, I think even at the lower level, it holds true that by the time you've gotten an oral argument on something, it's kind of the point at which you want the prediction is before that stage, right. Probably.
You don't
you're
want
deciding
it on
whether
like
to file the motion for summary judgment or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, like, but you could theoretically, and even this is a little far, but you could move to dismiss, see how that's sounding, and be like, you know what, discovery is not worth it. This judge is so gonna hate our summary judgment motion. Let's not even bother with this because maybe we could win, but like we'd have to go through that. We'd have to get to, maybe it's not worth it. And it's possible, potentially, that you could start making early case motions to do XYZ that are kind of frivolous potentially, but that you could get a sense of the claims from, and that to Steve's point about how you can't predict anything. I mean, I would wonder if I had something like this, do I move to dismiss even in a case where I know it's a summary judgment situation? It's not really a motion to dismiss moment. But I move to dismiss rather than answer immediately because I then know I'm going to get an oral argument where I can hear the judge opine on the quality of at least the pleadings. And based on that, now I know. Now, is that good or bad?
Yeah, you can make predictions. You can make predictions all the way through. But, I mean, you take the logical extension of that, and you begin to say, okay, well, maybe you could use a tool like this in voir dire to begin predicting what now you're like really really out there. So interesting stuff.
That's interesting. Does anybody, this is totally off the cuff and just derailing the conversation, does anybody talk to jury consultants about like what they're doing with AI? I'm kind of interested because that seems like I know several of them. I'll call because that seems like an industry that is ripe for that we've not talked a lot about. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe other
good point.
have.
Yeah. There is, I mean, there are a couple of, products out there that are trying to use docket data to
Yeah.
predict outcomes. And there was that
Right.
one that came out this year. I haven't heard much more about it. They just launched in February. The Ross co-founder, Jimo of Biagale, who launched a new company called BetchIQ, which is supposedly going to try and extract all this transcript and all sorts of other data from oral hearings in trial courts to create a greater body of knowledge from which to predict how judges will rule on different kinds of matters. But
I wrote
Yeah,
about it
there's
yesterday with Predictor with Quinn Emanuel.
Predicta, yeah, that's one of
So,
them. Yeah.
so I wrote literally just yesterday about Quinn Emanuel has rolled it out across the firm, and it does exactly this, and it analyzes judges' behavior, analyzes all the dockets, and analyzes the case law the federal case law, in order to to help people decide whether to proceed, and they're using it for quite sort of weighty decisions quite early on.
And I
And
think
it's
Lexus was doing some of this, right?
Yeah, all of that though is basically based on sort of written material. What Joe is talking about is analyzing, audio, oral type inflections in voice and all of that, which is a little different, but not that much different.
So,
I mean,
so
it's
speaking of
conceptually not
inflections and
different,
in
but
voice, that's a good transition to a story. It wasn't quite Stephanie's story, but we'll give her credit because she pointed it out to us. But do you want to talk about that, Stephanie, or do you want to? Let me just jump in. The Tony Mauro piece on the from the Marble Palace blog.
Yeah, it was definitely, I can't take credit for it at all. I just
Yeah.
happened to see it right before this and send it to you all on Slack. So, I mean, you could talk about it or I could talk about it. It was from the Marble Palace blog. I just thought it was fascinating. Yeah, the same thing sort of, this just to be filed under really cool. I don't know how useful, but educational, fun, and cool. They were recreating the oral arguments in Brown versus Board of Education, but so you're able to hear them. There's no audio recording of it, but they have the transcripts, and they've used little bits of audio recording of the various players, Thurgood Marshall, and of the lawyers, different people, whoever spoke in the oral argument, that they have of other recordings of them, of their voices, to try to create the AI. But then they also hired professional voice actors who have similar voices to read the transcripts, and they wrapped their voices in AI to do just a very robust recording, so you could hear what it would have sounded like. And it's just a really cool educational historical initiative. So I don't know. I mean, there's
Deep faking Brown versus Board of Education in a
Yeah,
sense.
I mean,
really cool.
it
In a
seems
cool
like
way.
if the voice actors are good enough to pull that off, we could have just hired voice actors for all of it, right? Like that's only partially snarky. Like it seems like if that is going to be the stopgap that we always have to go to, then just you didn't need to wait. You could have done it earlier if people are that good. I don't know.
Yeah, but they recreated the voices of the actual people here, which is kind of interesting.
Well, right, except
Yeah.
some of it they did, and some of it was the voice actors covering the middle, right? That they thought were good enough to do it. Which
they took the actual voices, used AI to create them, but they did an AI wrapper around the. There's a thing. There's actually a YouTube clip you can watch where you see the voice actor reading it, and then they have it right next to it, the voice actor wrapped in the AI recreation of Thurgood Marshall's voice, and it's different. And they do that through the whole thing. So it is so it sounds like you're there without any voice recordings of the people back then are so thin and tinny. So it gives it a depth, and it makes it's a really cool initiative.
I just feel like it makes me feel as though this application of AI reminds me of, there was a Simpsons episode where they were talking to a cartoon about cartoons, and one of the people was like, "Yeah, I was the voice of the Roadrunner, Meep," and they're like, "You mean Meep Meep?" And she's like, "No, they doubled it in editing." It's like we're gonna start paying these people for one reading, and then we'll double it in editing.
Yeah.
beep beep.
Oh, by the way, the diss track controversy has now been raised here, and I'm like, I could do a whole show on that. So we won't get into the diss track Drake and Lamar thing, but that is wild.
Next
I have
week,
two
we say this
teenagers. I
every-
have to listen to that a lot.
I mean, K.1, right? Like by a lot. Like it wasn't even particularly close by the end. Anyway.
Here's a really minor side note about Tony Mauro, the Supreme Court reporter, the amazing Supreme Court reporter who wrote that little piece about the recordings. But he actually started his career as a reporter at the Gloucester Daily Times. Gloucester is here, the little town that I am based in here with my office. And in the early to mid 70s or something, Tony was a reporter
Wait,
here for about
you
4
were
years.
there and he was there? That's like
I
a
wasn't
perfect
here.
storm.
I wasn't here.
That's
then,
like a
no.
perfect storm of.
I was alive then, but I wasn't.
I know. Yeah.
I wasn't here. Yeah, it was like a perfect storm. Good.
Yeah. See, that there.
Ah.
Yeah. All right. I did a story this week on I thought another sort of interesting use of AI. I mean, we've all talked about the ability to use AI to kind of summarize long documents, and it's been a number of companies have been using it for transcripts to take a long deposition transcript and boil it down to its essence. But this company, Steno, this week came out with a product called Transcript Genius, which is kind of cool because it lets you, as they put it, interrogate your deposition transcripts. And so right now it only works against a single transcript. It's pretty cool in that, but the goal is to be able to expand it so you'll be able to take a whole set of transcripts and ask questions about them. But it goes beyond just searching. I mean, you're able to say something like, did the witness ever contradict themselves in this transcript, or did the witness express anything that could go toward the issue of damages, or did the witness make any key admissions against interest or something like that in this transcript? And from the demos I saw, it looks to be pretty good in terms of providing responses to that. To me, the real killer app will be when they can kind of extend that across a group of transcripts, because then you could say, here's this expert witness, here's 10 depositions of this expert witness, and what has this expert witness ever said about, I don't know, their education, or there have been any inconsistencies about their education, or something like that. To just be able to go in and do the work that right now is pretty still much done by humans, having to go through transcripts and put sticky notes and highlights and whatever else. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
if you
read-
could,
when
if
I-
you could go across transcripts in different cases, for example, with an expert, that would be really, really valuable. Because, I mean, not that any expert would ever say one thing in one case and something else in another case, but just in case that they would. That would be really. Bob, is it also capable of? So you could say, at any point did this witness appear to be angry? Can it do things like that, or no?
That's a good question. I don't know whether it has any kind of sort of sentiment detection to it. I don't know.
I kind of got the sense it did based on something in your article. I can't remember why though. But it's been a couple of days, it's been a couple of hours, so I don't know. But I was gonna say with this idea that it can do that across transcripts, I actually thought of, and Caroline, I know that you were somebody I talked to about this a couple years ago at Legal Week. Like it made me think of a perfect marriage with what is it, legal liquid text, and the way in which it was all like, oh, I annotate this and it goes across here to this one, and like whatever, like all of that mapping different moments from different transcripts and different statements and different exhibits to create a through line. I was like, oh, if you could get like all of this stuff, and I that's what I saw when I was looking at it. I don't know if there's any way that they all could play together, but my head was very like, ooh, if I had this and that, I'd be in a great shape.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
Dennis is
time-saving.
right. I think the
Time-saving as
Trinetics
well.
product is also doing something like this. He didn't necessarily build it so much for this as trip across it. I think in using his Merlin search for some different applications, but he's also exploring this idea of being able to query your transcripts and I think multiple transcripts as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the time
I
saving is
always feel like John's. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I always feel like John's building something that I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that people were building that right now. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. It's true.
I owe John an article.
I also love how they were like, yeah, we built this really cool. And we're like, but you also raised $46 million. They're
Right.
like, yeah, but this tool is really cool. Yeah.
I think this is an interesting use. I think this is a really good use of AI, like finding almost and I'm seeing increasingly, not just with transcripts, but in the litigation space, like finding the gaps, finding like how, when you're comparing, like your deposition or their deposition, I'm finding, things that it really does take the human brain a lot of effort and time to work out, say where is theirs. This is a very stupid way of just describing it, but how is theirs better? What is ours missing? This is a really clever use of the technology. That it takes us a really long time to get there, and sometimes we may not even spot it. It's not a case of just to compare, or is it this the same, is that the same? It's really an intelligent use of the technology, going what might we what how's there's sort of, how can we improve it effectively, or find the gaps.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking that so if you had a big case with several witnesses of a corporation, which often happens, you might have 10 corporate witnesses and a corporate designee. If you could use this tool to sort of see where they did contradict each other, or at least conceptually contradict each other, that could be really, really helpful.
Yeah, that whole financing thing was the fundraise thing was very weird the way they put it out, because they didn't put out too many details. I happened to be talking to somebody earlier this week who works at a PE firm that had been an earlier stage investor in this company, who said he didn't know about it until he read it read it on my blog. It's kind of funny how that was kind of a footnote to the story, but good for them.
There's like one line in the press release, but then it's
Yeah.
like, okay. Like it's
Right.
not, I mean, $46 million is very large.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of
No.
millions.
No. We're
Yeah.
buying things for 650 now, even though they may not have actually had that much in project revenue. Like, come on, we're past all that inflation,
All right, we got a couple minutes. Steve, you want to give us what's happening? What do we know so far yet about Tech Show? Anything?
Tech Show is going to be in April the next year, and as opposed to the dead of winter. And we've spent the past 2 days working on it. One of the things that I think we have a recognition of is the need for some practical kind of workshop kind of things. I've noticed at a lot of conferences, particularly with generative AI, there's a lot of discussion about how it works, what it does, sort of in the abstract, and a lot of people sort of sit there and go, oh, okay. But then when you actually see it do things, it becomes much more apparent, particularly to lawyers, what it can do and the value of it. I know Joe and I were at a conference, and the presenter showed how you could use the tool to create a job description. And I'm thinking to myself, there are a lot of lawyers out there with small firms that have to create job descriptions, and they probably take 2 weeks to try to figure it out because they have no clue and they don't do it. Now they could do that. So our thinking, this week was just to begin focusing, at least in part, on a lot of sort of practical things that we can do, workshop kind of things, to show lawyers and legal professionals what some of these tools can actually do. Because when you see them, if you talk about them and describe it, it's one thing. To actually see them do these things is quite another. So So we'll see. I think it's going to be a great show this coming year, and hopefully, Bob, you will be back with Startup Alley.
If anybody invites me,
You're invited.
heard from the
That's done.
powers that be. I don't know.
You just did.
Okay.
Joe's gonna
And
be
when
there.
is wait? And oh, sorry. The conversation in the chat is, and then when is tech show? You said April.
April 5th and 6th, I believe, are the dates. 5th, 4th
All right.
through, yeah, that first week in April.
All right.
South
Well,
Caroline, go on.
You're gonna be there with your startup, your gambling, your gambling stuff. Yeah. It's gonna-
I can't go to legal week at this point because those dates don't work for me. Probably because I am gambling. But yeah,
I mean, there's 6,000 attendees, and you were not the only one they planned around. The overwhelming feedback is people wanted it in March.
sounds like you screwed up by not planning around me. No,
don't worry. There's
I
always
might be able to
Delta
make
But
it.
involved.
asked my preference, so
I might be able to make it. We'll see. There's a possibility.
They were going to ask you to be the keynote too.
I mean, one would have thought that would have happened years ago, but here we are. I don't know.
All right. Well,
I don't know, Joe.
Cassandra's
Joe,
got
be
places
careful
to
what you
go,
ask
so
for.
we better bring this show to a close. The rest of us are just continuing on, but she's got exciting new places to go. But Cassandra, congratulations, best wishes. I would drink a toast if I had something to toast, but I've just got water here. But
Thank you. I'll
Best
just
of
use my tea. I'll toast. Thank you. And I hope you invite me back, please. If not, I'll just beg one of you to just invite me
will.
back. And but I am not going too far. I hope I run into some of you many times again. And you know where I am, GC. So if you're ever around, you need to let me know. I'll find out. I know everything. So I will be mad if you to see you don't tell
You know,
me.
the problem is not that we would not invite you back. The problem is I don't think Bloomberg lets you be on a show like this while. But we'll see.
oh, we've had people from Bloomberg on. haven't
Are you
we?
on the blacklist somewhere? What did you do?
Probably
Have
should.
we had Bloomberg people on?
I'm trying to think. Have we? I don't know.
We
There's
had,
first
we had
one, I
Roy
think.
Strom on. We had
Yeah,
Roy
you're
on,
right.
but we had Roy on before he went there, I think.
No, I think he was there. We had
No,
him
he
on.
was. Yeah,
Was
he
he
was
there?
there when we were. Yeah.
I think he was. Yeah.
I think it was like I thought it was like the week before he announced he was leaving.
No, I
To
think
go
we've had him
there.
on since he's been like the law firm.
Okay. All right. Well, then,
columnist
yes,
guy
good.
there.
All right
We'll see.
then.
It must have been somebody else.
should have put it in your
I don't know.
contract, along with you have to
Yeah.
go to legal week to hang out with
There you
the
go.
team.
I've been taking notes this whole time. It's all going to them as soon as we hang up. Don't you worry.
All right. Well, let us know how we can find you, and we'll get you back on here.
I will. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me. I appreciate it.
All right. As for
Welcome,
everybody else,
everyone.
hope you have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Come on.
Take care.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Thanks, everyone.